Well, we are at the end of my songwriting challenge. Thank you so much, so much to everyone who stayed the entire journey or wherever you hopped on. I have completed 30 songs. And of course, more than 30 songs were written in that time. Not just with other people, but also there were some days that I had to write a song before the song, or I wrote something that needed to be produced and it was just not going to be able to be finished within a day. I was still very careful with how much time I spent on it. I apologize if there are people yelling in the background. I do not know why this is like a YouTube phenomenon. This is like a filming phenomenon. Someone starts yelling as soon as you start filming. But anyway, hopefully it's not too bothersome. It's bothering me. I sat here in this very spot 30 days ago and set myself some parameters so that I had something to be accountable to. I wanted fresh songs and I wanted to be unfiltered. And that is a very Jungian approach. It's free association, Freudian. I needed to express baggage, I guess, gaslighting. There were some truths that I just did not want to admit. There were feelings, there were resentments, there was wrong perceptions, pain, yearning eventually. And my own just pain and truth that I had to get out. As I said earlier in that video, I didn't want to hold back on the fact that there was a significant amount of my upbringing that was very negative, very violent. So I feel proud that I was able to incorporate that in some ways. And it wasn't too bad. I don't think too many of my songs necessarily needed a trigger warning, but they were truthful, and there are some lines in there that you may think are metaphors. There aren't metaphors. I grew up around holes in walls and going to church on Sunday, pretending to be happy families. And that carried on way too long into my adulthood. Not the violence, not in that way anyway, but the self-gaslighting. I took pride in painting red flags green. I took pride in the way that I could show up seemingly well and happy, interested, whatever it may be, whatever the situation required, I showed up in that energy, and then I just, privately recharged or melted down behind the scenes. There is so much yelling going on outside. I must continue because I've gotten in this frame of mind where I want to be reflective. It's hard for me to make this video because I want to be so truthful and I want to be real. I have typically in the past shown up with a fairly sugary sweet energy. That's great with kids, that's great on stage, it's great hosting events, and it's great in social situations. But the whole purpose of doing this challenge was to get back to the core of me and really strip away any of the pretense, any of the facade, and face myself. Like I said, face uncomfortable truths. Learn to accept reality. Just learn to accept reality. I don't know if I can add another sentence to that. I have always been a chameleon, we'll say. And even though I'm very strong, I've always been strong since a teenager in terms of making my own decisions, and I dropped out of school. But social customs still drew me back in and sucked me into creating a life for myself that I didn't want. And there were aspects of it that I thought I wanted, but so much of it was still performative. So much of it was still based on making other people happy. When you're brought up in abuse, you become very other-oriented, and you get a lot of positive social feedback for doing that. But then you also get burnout and you never feel truly connected to anyone because you don't bring your full self to the table. And in general, that is something we all face because we live in a society and we live in the society we live in. The society that we live in is hard for me. It's easier for me in some ways than a lot of people. A lot of people that are performing way more and need validation and need stuff to feel safe. I've long let go of all of that. It never really hit me properly. But I still wanted connection and safety and validation and to please, not please like people giving me praise, just please as in I was pleased with the situation. I was pleased that there was at least someone in the room that was holding a bird's eye view and making sure everyone was okay. And it's not wrong to be like that, and I will still always show up in a room with a client or in a room of people or on stage with that energy, but at least I've stripped away the parts of myself where I was still doing that in front of myself, and I was still far, far, far too other-oriented to the point of being very self-abandoning, self-sacrificing. One of my more recent songs, I did use the word ashamed. I said I was ashamed of how weak I've been. That's a perception shift. I have had a lot of perception shifts from doing this. I might not be able to remember them all because the way I do self-development and personal development and healing and growing, as soon as I can see something in a way that frees me, it's like it never happened. I don't like to hold baggage. I like to feel light and energetic. I like to feel well. That's something that makes me feel well. I don't like holding grudges. I don't like thick energy. This challenge has shown me so much about myself. One, of course, how easy it is for me to write a song. It got easier. I devoted less and less time to it, and I want to keep that up. Later on, I'll talk about my plans for what to do next because I want to keep writing at a fairly prolific pace. I have a good thing going on now. I like the whole iPhone memo verbal diary thing. It is very difficult to choose the right words to convey what I've been through. In some ways, this video probably would have been better to have done over the course of the challenge and then compile all of the little breakthroughs that I had, because I find it so difficult to remember them, to sit down, set up the camera, and then try and remember these breakthroughs that I've had, especially since I've been working so hard over the past 5 years to unhook anything that tethered me to untruths, to ways of performative showing up. There is a core within everyone. You may call it your soul, you may call it consciousness. Some people may call it God with a capital G or little g. I don't quite mind. When you get there, and I feel like I have gotten there before, but you can still pile up the laundry again. Living is a constant laundry maintenance to make sure your truth and the core of who you are doesn't continually get veiled by things around you and fleas. That core has absolutely no shame. It doesn't register things in polarized good and bad the way that we have to in our human embodiment so that things can exist in matter. And I've always found people, humans that I interact with, that I encounter out and about in the world, just fall way too hard into two categories of either being so intellectual or so industrious that they have long lost connection to their soul to the point of mocking the concept, and people who spend so long there that they're almost in a drug daze, whether they're on psychedelics or they just need pot every day, or the way that they create sucks them into that other world. And I do love that other world, but they never seem to come out of it, and they sound fairly nonsensical, and time doesn't exist. Because time doesn't exist. We have to sense it. So they, to me, this group of people, the intellectuals, yay, they run functional lives within the matrix. These ones, to me, sort of have the truth, and I've gelled. I've felt a more stronger personal connection with those type of people, but at the end of the day, they're still very unbalanced. And it's good to take time in that world. And creativity is very helpful to reconnect to that part of yourself that is eternal. But I do feel like you can't stay there. So there's a Bible verse, be in the world but not of the world. That would be something like my ultimate value, to be able to show up and withstand being around people that are confused, hurt, pompous, convinced that they're right, and all bumping into each other like bumper cars, and all shouting their opinions without taking any input from anyone else, and seeking to gain something from other people, walking into a room and looking at what they can get from it, or even self-conscious people walking into a room and hoping that no one can see the things they're insecure about. It can be a challenge if you're going to try and live like that, to find other people who live like that, because I think to live like that necessarily comes with a lot of cock-ups. We're going to make mistakes. We're creative. We like to try things. We have to stay in that creative world so that we can make things, so that our attempts at either bringing forward uncomfortable truths or making something beautiful and artistic and lovely, so that we can make attempts in those directions without judging ourselves to the point that nothing comes out and we shut shop. You can probably tell from some of my utterings this month that that's where I had been stuck at certain periods. I had never experienced that in my life up until the point that I did, and I got stuck. And it was a very suffocating experience to have always been identified with being a creative person, and then still semi-being, making things, but it's not true creativity, and I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy. But I was such a good liar. I still tried my best to put my best foot forward, to appear like I was. And so the way I would describe myself now is deeply happy. And this can be confusing for some people. You can't chase happiness. So for me, whether I'm confused or in pain or touched by something, disappointment and grief is something I kind of microdose because I'm a sensitive person. So to be able to show up in the world the way I want to, which is basically stoic. But I'm driving a female meat sack. I have a monthly cycle. I'm a Cancer, if you're into astrology. I don't know too much about it, but I have been told certain things. I kind of strike that Cancer-Leo balance of being incredibly fiery and energetic and a huge go-getter. Very BDE, but also incredibly nurturing and sensitive and soft and gentle and slow. Allowing myself to take that level of shameless, loving acceptance and apply it to the way that I am and have to show up into the world necessarily brings up Of course I did run out of data. Of course I did run out of storage doing this. Figuring out how I can show up in the world and how I can't brings up grief for me, because I used to get so much fulfillment from showing up in the ways that other people needed. And so it touched still on a whole bunch of religious trauma and the limiting and polarized beliefs that I was brought up with. Now, I can't talk for anyone else. I can only talk for myself. And because I knew I was intelligent, I always thought going down an academic path was inevitable for me. And so I went down an academic path for about as long as I could. It's very limited. It's just not for me. It's not for me. But it got me stuck personally, because I couldn't just have my own opinion. I had to research something, and then I presented a conclusion paragraph of, my own literary review. I would collect a bunch of research on something, look at the pros and cons, and come out with something that then I felt like I had the truth on, but I didn't feel within myself what was my truth, my lived experience, what things did and didn't work for me. I've always been an observer, but I still then took those observations and put them back within a context of scholarly rigor. Scholarly rigor doesn't leave room for magic. And I've gotten more and more comfortable with using that word. That's very relatable and accessible word. A better word would be quantum, but I think that's off-putting. I'm not talking about science or physics. Not that I couldn't. My personal upbringing was religion, and so it took a long time to see. It took a long time to heal from patriarchy and internalized misogyny. I personally didn't want to get into a discussion on those topics, but there was so much within my own experience then that I was ignoring. And when you're brought up as a Christian girl, there are still families within Christian circles that are doing fairly well. They love their daughters, they raise them with affection and care, and as such, then they're able to stay relatively well, even though they're doing patriarchy. So you're your dad's property, and then if he takes care of you well, he fields off any outsiders, he doesn't let any foxes in, and then when a noble enough person comes along, then he passes you on to them. But you're still owned by your dad and then your husband. And within Christian circles that my mum then collected wrong values from, raised me under, and then the sermons that I was listening to every week, shaming women, shaming sexuality, being so rigid. I absorbed all of those things as truths, and it was very confusing, but because I was so other-oriented, it just took me totally out of myself. And I could perform. Even though I wasn't raised well in terms of care and love and nurture and physical and emotional safety, I was smart. So I've faked a lot, and it's not necessarily even negative. It kept me safe in a lot of ways. But I dreamed about that life. I dreamed about what it would have been like. I yearned to know what it would have been like to have been loved and felt loved growing up, and then chosen a good husband, and then just continued on like that. And I've washed away those fantasies. So some of it came from the church and some of it came from my mum's expectations from me, but all of that limited my ability to check in with myself and what I truly wanted. And so add another layer to that, my research about what makes humans happy and well, what makes community function, what generally are good activities for men and women. I've read all of that, and then I thought to myself, I need to make sure I give myself all of those things so that I can be happy and well. As I sang a few nights ago, I cannot be quantified. To chuck a research term in there, I can't be quantified. I don't fit in any of those boxes. But I can. The problem is I can. I can act like I did, but I never did. And so what happens to women when they're repeatedly told that what makes them good is serving their husband, making sure he's well fed, serving his purpose, buffering his ego, having sex when you don't want to? You end up rerouting to get validation from doing those things. So then you have to necessarily find selfish people to serve so that you can feel like a good person. And you're hemorrhaging energy when you're doing that, because all you get is a maybe thanks. And the validation from doing something like that doesn't last very long. And so there's this long drone note, this long note that's being played throughout your life. That is just the grief that you're not willing to face. But there's this triumphant hope on the other side that real connection is possible if you can just stop performing for it and be willing to go through abandonment and rejection, really, for setting boundaries, for choosing to be around good people, for leaving jobs, leaving friendships. Christian people often talk about turning the other cheek. I allowed people to spin me around and dazzle me and manipulate me with all the ways that it was me who needed to take the higher road, and me who needed, if I had all this knowledge, and I think I'm such a nice person, you're so kind, you say you're such a kind person and you know all this stuff. I could be controlled by guilt. It's very embarrassing to say. And it's dangerous to say something like that until you've healed from it to the point that you know it wouldn't work on you anymore. And that was the biggest commitment that I made to myself. I'm not going to be controlled by anyone else. I'm not going to be controlled by my fears. And that leaves me feeling very fresh. To a lot of extent, everyone's individual life is a pilgrimage, and we do have friends along the way. There are certain characters that come and play bigger and smaller parts, but we are on our own journey and we're all the main character. And what we choose to make our movie interesting is different for everyone. Some people choose parenthood, and then the struggles and triumphs and cuteness and mess of parenthood is what transforms them, help them learn more about themselves, become stronger, become softer, just transform into a more honest and connected human. Some people choose travel. Some people choose study. I think for me, I really found it difficult to know what to choose. And here and there, people have asked me, why did you choose music? I don't feel like I chose music. I feel like it chose me. And as, I'm going to get emotional. The funniest, sweetest little synchronicities happen the more that you let your destiny, the more that you let what is meant for you find you, and you allow it to be, and you connect with it, and you make love to it. It is a making love. Showing the divine my commitment to turn up every day and to write every day and to enter that space of soul and eternity and creativity. You are rewarded with friendships on the other side, as they would say. The realness of what I will currently use the word elves to describe. You might use guides, little friends. Tiny Voices was a song about that. They just become more real, and you can have direct communication with them. You can let them write through you. That's from me. I can let them write through me. I can imagine those tiny voices impacting people to make beautiful architecture, to carve wood, to make sculptures, to make beauty. And so it is my understanding now, this is my perception, that if everyone could come back to themselves, get their little voices back in, and be in touch with their intuition and their divine calling, we would have a neo-renaissance. That's what I genuinely think. Everyone wants to show up daily to the thing they're called for. And this is a lesson I learned a long time ago, watching nature, sitting down in the grass, watching the birds fly over, and they're pooping on everything. And the plants are growing and not growing, and different things are happening, and it just seems like every other creature in nature knows exactly what it's meant to do, and it just does it. And humans get so confused. But it's all part of the fun. Life is a bit of a game of hide and seek, so I've discovered. Another thing that I haven't wanted to talk about that has come through strongly, I don't know why I feel so serious about this. You know, an hour ago when I was sitting down, relaxing, looking at the waves, I was so light and assured on the shore. But it is so difficult to talk about how intertwined libido and creativity are. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I read Freud. I mainlined his stuff years ago. But the concept of libido being life force energy, necessarily, as well as the neo-renaissance that would happen if everyone was in flow and allowing energy to immediately become a joyful, beautiful, purposeful, meaningful output, you get really horny. You get super, super horny. So you have to be a responsible person. You really have to grow in responsibility. You can't just... I don't know. Look, I will be completely honest. I have a fairly liberal view on sexuality and clothing. When you've come from a background of shame, and so you've had to figure out you've had to heal shame so that you could survive and function and stop being fucking miserable. You keep going beyond the average person. So here's the average level of shame. Most people were shamed. They think they were disciplined. They were shamed growing up so that they became a certain type of person. And that means that there are natural human instincts and their own personality and drives that they've repressed and have grown dark. If you're born with a lot of that and you chip away at it, once you get to the average person's level of shame, you just keep going. You're used to chipping away at your shame. And then you don't end up becoming a shameless person because you're not rebellious. I wear clothing, I dress nicely, but ultimately I wouldn't mind if people didn't. And I've thought this a number of times this month. You know, if I was at the beach and there was a couple that loved each other and they're being gentle and consensual, or they're ravishing each other, whatever, however they want to express themselves, and they're in the bushes or they're under the boardwalk and they're just doing it, I would be so happy. Like, that would fill me with happiness. And I know humans, because I don't know if this is a white thing, I haven't done any research on it perhaps in a long time. I may have done some research on it in my life, but it's been a long time. At the very least, even we giggle when we see two dogs in the park humping, or cows, or insects. Even it's funny when you see two insects humping. It's just like, oh, they're doing it. They don't have they don't have any judgment about what they should or shouldn't be doing. Now, as humans, and we are more complex social creatures, we have to be careful. We have to be well so that any sexual relations we have that result in children, the children are going to be well. But there are so many better ways that we could take care of children in our society so that people could be freer. Now, this is something that I'm a very empathetic person. I love children and animals. And over the years of teaching children, I came to understand that there are a lot of truths that they know that we shame them out of. I think it's important to wear protective clothing depending on what you're doing. Hygiene, personal safety, and then just fun. If you want to express yourself, I don't care if men wear dresses. Go for it. Wear studded booties. I don't mind. But I think the idea that our bodies are shameful and that sex is shameful is very deliberate. It was a very religion-y, colonizer-y way of controlling the population. Shame controls people. If you use shame, you can control a child, but that instantly severs connection. And so I wouldn't label myself, and I'm still trying to tread carefully so that I don't. One of the lines that I sang this week in Hello World was that I belong to me. So there's another thing that goes along with this that Christians shame a lot, and that's masturbation. And even though privately I've always been a very proud wanker, and I think it's an important part of health and lifestyle, but it's also a part of self-control. If you're a very creative person and you're vibrant and you're taking care of yourself, you're just going to be horny all the time. Personally, working through that shame, that did start for me last year in a big way, of just being like, I'm still trying to be a good girl. I'm still trying to make sure I don't think certain things or do certain things too often. You know how much spiritual wisdom and intuition and connection to your body and source and lucid dreaming comes when you just allow yourself to be delighted, to allow yourself to feel pleasure, to allow yourself to say that women and men deserve to feel pleasure. And it's something we're gonna have to approach as a society, especially for men. And like, I can feel my shoulders tensing up. It's so scary to say this, but I think someone has to. In general, I'm still trying to make sure that I set boundaries with myself. And even though someone has to, it doesn't necessarily have to be me. That can relate to a lot of things in terms of dangerous jobs or helping people that are going to be really damaging and dangerous and really affect me more than they might affect someone less sensitive or of a different temperament. I don't have to save everyone, but this is personal to me. Consent and control. Consent and control are themes that come out very strongly. For me, that's also really related to employment. Within mankind, not just saying men, but within mankind, there is this sick egotistical desire to have others serve us, to deny them of their needs, to deny them of their autonomy and their personal differences and uniqueness, and just instrumentalize them and exploit them for your own gain. So within religion, the wife is going to serve the husband. She's going to serve his needs, and sexually she's going to be available, and we're still washing that out. But employment is another thing that's having to change in our... Personally, it's changed. I don't necessarily think that learning to be a number and a cog in the system and to have no personal say over your life and devote many, many hours to doing something that doesn't suit you so that you have enough money to live is good for anybody. And we have I think we get some mixed signals in terms of thinking that even getting a teenager to go and get a part-time job is going to teach them responsibility. I can see, because I've taught a lot of teenagers and a lot of young people, that it simply makes them nihilistic, depressed, unconfident. They're not in control of what they want to do with their life, and the thing within them that they need to bring forth. And certain studies seem to reflect that young people are having less sex than ever. I don't know where they get the old data. Young people are not sexually confident. They may be sexually deviant. They may be watching a lot of pornography, and they may be at a level where, because they've been shamed a lot and society is not allowing them to show up fully, they're getting to express that control and autonomy and uniqueness in kink. But I still think that's a little bit of a shadow side. It's still important. I'm not kink shaming. It's important for the level of function society's at and what those individuals have been through in their life. The lack of autonomy, the such unnatural conditions that we're brought up in, basically being in prison 12 years. How do you know yourself? And now with technology, if you're brought up on the internet, you've seen yourself through more Snapchat filters than you have seen yourself in a mirror or talked to people, you're gonna get weird because all of that flows on into sexuality. Me, myself, personally, I had a lot of negative sexual attractions. And I had to figure out what was healthy, what wasn't. And I had to purify myself in the fire. I don't know how personal I want to go with that, but I do want to say that it's possible to change. Sometimes there may be something that you needed to get off for many years and it wasn't healthy. It might be something that hurt someone else, or it might be something where, for me, maybe like a body type. I was always fairly sexually turned on by obese people. I had to work so hard to remind myself that someone that looked like that had a terrible lifestyle or a lot of emotional baggage or was insecure, was not going to be a long-term life partner. So then I had to bring myself out of the shadows of being willing to be exploited and only seen as a sexual object so that I could stop seeing other people as only a sexual object. At this junction in my life, it makes it very confusing to know how to move forward. I see within heterosexual couples, men still getting used as workhorses. If they're employed, they're instrumentalized and exploited. And then they have to show up with a certain amount of strength that doesn't allow for the type of vulnerability that forms deep bonds and deep emotional security and connection and love beyond the physical, not just the physical body, but also providing various things, even providing novelty. And women, how tightly we were all raised to hold ourselves so that we would be exactly what a man would want, the exact specifications. And everyone wants something different anyway, so you can't win that game. And the separation that this causes in couples that want to please each other, but they don't know themselves very well, but they're very still looking to the other to get their needs met. Neither of them can put a foot out of joint because the other, both of them, are not going to have it. They're going to cause it. There's this concept called the singularity. Facing the abyss, facing the realization that once you have really gotten back in touch with your core, you can just choose to interact with whoever you want. You can choose to do whatever you want, but ultimately everything's a reflection of you. And there becomes such a lessening of a need to have a mirror, to be heard, to have anyone else hear and see you. You get very connected to yourself and your calling, and your concept of confidence changes because it's not about anyone else. I think a lot of people are scared of that, and indeed I probably was scared of that, maybe less so than the average person because not always a lot of fodder there to work with, so I haven't found them particularly interesting. When you have disappointments, when you go through breakups, when you lose your house or a bunch of money or any number of things that are shocks to the system, the way to cope is to come back to one, that it's just you. It really is just you. How are you going to be okay moving forward if you were the only person alive? That would be everyone's ultimate fear. But it is the truth. And stripping away everything to face yourself is glorious. And I think everyone should do it. This video did not go where I wanted it to go at all. But I will finish with a thanks again. I don't want to single out people because I might forget someone, and of course based on the views I couldn't possibly know everyone that has been following along, but hello and thank you. I'm going to keep songwriting under Sonic Diaries. I'm going to keep creating full productions of songs here and there, but I want to keep this relationship with myself and with the divine and with my purpose flowing, so I'm going to not create every single day, but definitely every week, and I will be uploading it here. So stay tuned. Literally, these little voice memos, these little sonic artifacts, I'm going to keep uploading them because they've been so helpful in getting to know myself and expressing truths and looking at them, and in getting faster and faster at turning melodies around in a way that pleases me so much. And that's what it's all about. And from the bottom of my heart, I can say I love you all. And thank you to those of you that have returned back for whatever reason, people that have been following me for years. Here in a much better, stronger, more fortified way. And I can say I love you because I love myself. And, you know, I used to try and be here for people by allowing them to use me emotionally. I know now all I have to do is enjoy myself and absolutely delight in the full kaleidoscope of human experience, whether that be joy, grief, horniness, adventure, confusion. I will sing about it and you can hop on here and hear about it.